Alright, we're going to fix this X3 headlight. The wires have all broken off. It's ridiculous. I tried to tape it, but it's all destroyed in there. So I need to rewire the whole thing. I'm not going to take the front cover off because that's a pain in the ass. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark it with a permanent marker. Then I'm going to pre-drill a couple plates. And then once I've got the holes set up, I'm going to remove the plates. I'm going to use this, and I'm going to cut the end off this thing. And I will take another picture when I am there. Once I've got it off, I'm going to rewire this whole thing with shrink wrap. Now, one of my connectors that goes to the brights, it's a 3-pin, has snapped off entirely. I have a replacement on order. I'll put a link in the description where you can get these. These X3 lights are not cheap. This is a cheap car for my daughter to go to high school. I'm not about to put a whole lot of money into it. If I get 4 years out of it, I'll be just fine. So I'll be right back. All right, I use these self-tappers, nice and easy. I pre-drilled the metal, so I didn't have to. I pre-drilled metal, so I didn't have to do metal and plastic at the same time. That way I've already got the holes pre-drilled, so after I cut it around, do all the wiring, and I put it back together, these, when I'm waiting for the glue to dry, these will keep them nice and tight and bright position, and it'll add some extra strength. So I find it's easier to drill the framework, framework beforehand, so you're not trying to wrestle with two separate pieces. Now that those are on that side, I'm going to do one on the other side. The ballast is going to act as a similar thing on the bottom. So I'm going to do one more plate, and then I'm going to take the plates out, use this cutter to cut the end off, end cap, and I'll go in there and rewire it. And then I will show you what that looks like when I'm done. Oh yeah, take note, I marked this A and A, B and B, so I don't get it mixed up. Should be pretty self-explanatory, but I'll probably be pissed off and tired, and I don't want to have to second guess. Alright, I took that saw, it went a hot knife through butter, cut the end of this off. I stuffed some cloth in there first and put it upside down so gravity would assist. These little plastic bits wouldn't go inside. I'm not interested in tracking those down and finding out why something else isn't working. As you can see, all the wires in here are deteriorated. This one as well. I have a blue X3 that this did happen to the fuel system. I had to do all the wires in the fuel system. Not fun at all. So I never use the brights. This only affects the brights with this broken connector. This only affects the brights. Everything else worked fine. And I live in an urban area, so I never use the brights. And I only need it for inspection. And I live in Texas, and then come January I won't need inspection either. And my daughter's not going to drive till next year, so in theory, I could have just ignored this. But I'm going to go ahead and see how, because there's a lot of people outside of Texas who need a solution. And I don't want that light on the dashboard constantly reminding me something's not working. So here it is. I'm going to clean these burrs off. Get it out, get all the wiring harness out. I have a shrink wrap package coming from Amazon. I'm going to re-shrink wrap all these bits. The dongle that broke off for the brights, they went to the wires that are hidden in here. I'm going to, when that pigtail comes from China, I'll wire that up and then I'll show you what's next. Alright, I'm back. I've already insulated a few of them. Here's one. This is a ground wire. And it goes all the way to here. So it's been re-insulated. Now I did, obviously you can't slip the insulation over this head, so I cut it about here. And then I ran some insulation. It looks like it's 1 mil inside diameter. It's snug. It's a snug fit on the small wires. I'll put a link in the Amazon, or in this description to Amazon. So effectively what I do is I cut the wire, I slip a sleeve about 5 inches on one side, and the other side is rather long, and it's like pushing on a sock. It's very difficult. So what I do is I cut it into 5-inch segments, and I slide a 5-inch segment on, slide another 5-inch, slide it. So now this is covered, that's covered with 5-inch segments, and this part right here, I have a small sleeve, which is about yay. This is also from Amazon. I'll put a link in here. Really, we're only going to be using about these. These other ones are too big. So I'll put in a small sleeve just to the side of the union over here. I'll put the two wires together, I'll solder them, and slide the union over top and heat shrink it. So that's how we're going to do all of them. The 3 that broke off from my brights, I've already put those on here and I've marked them. So these are going to go to the pigtail dongle I get from China whenever that shows up. And we have some larger wires that are going to need a larger diameter, but I believe the 2.5 mil from my kit works well, so 2.5 will be sufficient. So we've got, those should be, so 1 mil is good for the small ones. I think 1.5 is good for the medium ones, and then the 3 mil for the large ones, and that should work. So I'm going to work on one of these other small ones. I'm going to show you the process of cutting it, slipping a few on, soldering it together, and covering the sleeve on it, and it'll be done. The bigger ones, I'm going to use barrel connectors. Those are, it's really easy to put barrel connectors on. The small ones these are too small for barrel connectors, so I'm just going to solder it with some soldering kit right here. So I will show you how this next one goes. Alright, so I just cut the black one. You can barely tell it's black because the insulation is broken off, and it is through this ferrous material, so I'm going to pull it out of there, and then I'm going to re-insulate this in 5-inch segments, put it right back through there, insulate the other end of it, and then I will show you solder together. Alright, so here we are. Here's that black wire. I got a segment for here. I put this long one back through that ferrous material. I put it into 3 segments on this one. So now what I'm going to do is take and run it over here. I'm going to run it on there and run it to about here. So after I solder it, I'll slide it over, and that's going to be the next step. Alright, so here's my little holder. You can see my sleeve I'm about to slide over. I just pushed the 2 ends together a bit. I've got my soldering iron, and I'm going to solder them together, and then I'll pull the sleeve over, and I'm going to do that to all the small ones. You can see there's lots of them here. Maybe I'll do these because they look pretty good except for the ends. These look fine, and these big ones are going to be a pain in the butt. So I'll see you when I get back. Alright, it's soldered. Now I'm going to bring my sleeve over. I'm going to use 2 hands for this because I don't want to snag on anything, and this will be done. So now it's slipped over there. The wire is re-insulated. I'm going to use my shrink gun on all. Once I'm finally done, I'm going to get the shrink gun and the heat gun and shrink them all. But in the meantime, granted they're all the same color, but I don't care. They're all the same. They haven't left the same spot, so they're in the same place that they used to be. They'll all be the same color, but they still be done. Side note, if you are dexterous enough to get some of these, pop it open. Well, you know, I don't even think it needs to pop open, but stick a safety pin down the rectangular one. You can pull these guys out. Do one at a time. You can slide the insulation on, pop it back in, and you don't have to do any splicing. So that might be worth your effort as well, because there's a small tab that holds it in place. Make sure you don't, sorry for the camera, this is a small tab that I pushed in with a straight pin. I was able to slide it out. That way I can slide some insulation on, and I don't have to splice or solder those wires. So yeah, it's tedious, but I mean, the cheapest one I found on eBay was $200, and it was yellow faded and cannot guarantee that it doesn't have the same insulation issue. So once I get it all put together and shrunk wrap and bolt the cap back on, I'll give it a shot. But I'm going to take more pictures as I go. I've got about half of them done, and we'll see what I can do for the rest of them. Alright, here's a quick update. You can see when I get heated up in the end, this is one of the ends of the X3, I guess. I'm able to pull the cable out. There's a tab on the end. So I put a safety pin down there, push the tab out, then I line the whole wire, heat shrink it, and put it back in. Easy peasy. I've already done two, one more to go. Those are the 2mm. So 2mm works really well for these. It'll fit over the middle end, and it'll heat shrink over, so I don't have to splice these wires. I just reconnect those. So the ones you can pull out of the Molex end, great. Else you're gonna have to cut them and solder them. So this will save you some time. Just pull that out, slide a shrinkable wrap on it, heat sink the first one, put it back in, heat them all up with a heat gun, and boom, there you go. Alright, here it is put back together, and they're all insulated. I don't know if you can see that or not. Now you just got to do that with the rest of them. Alright, so I'm down to the last few wires. These are the skinny ones, the really small ones that I pulled the pins out. And I have some 3mm or 1/8 inch. So the 3mm or 1/8 inch does fit on it fairly well. So if you just want to buy one type of cover, 3mm will cover all the wires. So instead of having to buy 2 or 3 different sizes, 2 will work. 2 will be snug for all of them. 3 works best. 3 works for the big ones. 1 is really snug for all of them. So I would recommend just getting 2 or 3mm to do all your wires. And I'll let you know when I'm done. Alright, now here to put this bulb in. This can be a battle when you can't see it, so I'm going to make sure we can see it very well. I've got the cap taken off of the wires. You can see it's got this keyhole-like feature. That's for this rod thing that comes up and down the bulb. So you have the 3 pieces, and I'm sure you've wrestled this trying to figure out how to do it. I found a super easy way. This little nodule here goes to the circle right there. So you put that on, and then you turn it, now locked into place. Perfect. So now this is one complete unit. And if I was to put this on here, it fits on there perfectly. It holds on really nice, and so it went on really easy. So do that again. Perfect. Now what happens is this bulb can go on 2 ways. It can go on one way or 180 degrees off, but you have to make sure that this goes into this keyhole spot. So what you do is you put that down in here without touching it, like so, and it has the capacity to turn. Do not turn it. That's where we break into run into problems. If I'm trying to turn this, thinking they'll make it work. Just set it in there. And as a whole unit, it won't fall out. Put that towards here, make sure the keyhole goes in. And when you put that in there and turn it, voila. Everything is, that's how easy it is. How simple is that? That's what happens. Is the problem is we try and turn that bulb when we stick it in there, and then it won't work. The turning of the bulb happens when you put it on the device. So that's how you need to put it in. Lock the ring in, put the bulb in, but do not turn it. Set it in there, turn it. Perfect every time. Alright, it's all wired back up, insulated, all the wires that need to be insulated, and except the 3 that are the dongle for the brights. I still have to wait for those to come in the mail, but I've identified them, marked them 1, 2, 3 accordingly, and when I do get those in the mail, I'll be able to reach through those. I'll be able to reach out through the standard opening and wire those together, and then plug it in down there where it belongs. I might pull the bulb out again, but we'll see how that goes. So now, got everything insulated and marked. I'm going to get the cap that I cut off, and I'm going to put it back on, and then we'll worry about gluing up the different versions. And put the ballast back on, the 2 metal plates I put on the top, and then we'll work about filling in the gaps where the vibrator cutter cut the top off. Alright, the ballast has got 2 screws in it. The last screw is going to go onto the top half. This I plugged in. This made sure it was plugged in properly. This piece I had to pull off the cap that I cut off, and it will only go in one way because it's got 1 groove here, 2 grooves here. It will only go in one way, so when I go back to put this cap on, it will go in there properly, and then of course I'll put the screws in. And then we will put the other 2 pieces in. I could probably put some pop rivets in there, but I might want to get back in there again. So I don't do pop. I use my self-tapper screws and these 2 metal plates that I produced, A and B. You remember those from the other videos. I will let you know when that piece is back together. Alright, here you go. You can see the 2 braces I put on the top again. The ballast is holding the last one up. I put some zip ties in there to clean it up a bit. This is still the piece that I need from China. Once I get that in, I'll put that together and put that down there where it belongs to work for the brights to work. But in the meantime, it's ready to go back in the car. We've got this piece bit back together. The ballast is wired up, and the 2 pieces, I'm glad, and you can see the gap where I cut it. Obviously I'm going to have to put some JB Weld, hot glue, super glue, Gorilla Glue, whatever to keep most of the moisture out. Again, I'm not trying to make a show car out of it. It's got to get through high school. And so now we just put it back in the car. There's plenty of videos on that. I'm going to probably put insulation on the end of each of these so that they don't cross. Last thing I need to do is to blow a fuse if I accidentally turn my brights on. But then I'll shove that back in there, put the cap on, and we'll be good to go. But this is probably the last video. You guys can figure out the rest of it yourself. I hope this added value. It's really not that hard. $25 worth of parts. 3 mil insulation. Pull out the wire ends from the harnesses as you can. Slip the whole sleeve on there. Or you're going to have to cut the wire and solder back together. Heat shrink them on there. I have a little electric shrink gun. Heat gun. I should have shown that in the video, but whatever. And just redo all your wires. I took what, $30 worth of parts, materials, 3 hours, maybe 4 hours worth of work, and bada boom, it's done. Still has the same headlight that came with matches the driver's side. I can spend $250 for another one, but there's no guarantee those wires won't be crispy as well. So hopefully this helps someone out.